Ladies, gentlemen, and variations thereupon, it is with great regret that I make this call to action. We need to stop making Doctor Who. This is rather embarrassing to admit, but there's no other way to say it. For nearly 60 years now, we've been doing time travel wrong. Something goes wrong in the TARDIS, and an apparition of a man appears in the console room screaming in agony. They land in a dystopian version of London 2006, Britain is getting the long overdue invasion it deserves, and is losing a war with South Africa. When the TARDIS team arrive, they find the man killed. Don't be sad, he gets better. His name is Colonel Andrews, and he's working for a top-secret government project running time travel experiments. Because this is 60s Doctor Who, they're quickly captured and taken to this facility, where it turns out that there is not only another Andrews running around, there's like 20 of them, all with interesting little differences, as if they've come from alternative timelines? I'm mostly familiar with Simon Guerrier's work from the Companion Chronicles. He's fleshed out Sarah Kingdom, and given the Doctor a whole new companion played by Tom Allen. So it's fair to say that the dude knows how to write Hartnell-style Who. In the Aztecs, the question of interference was basically down to practicality. There is no chance that Barbara was ever going to completely stop all of human sacrifice in Mexico all by herself. This takes a radically different approach by basically invoking chaos theory. Each time Colonel Andrews went back in time, they arrived in a world in which they never went back in time in the first place. But neither the duplicate nor the original gets erased from history or changed. It just means the newcomer is now stuck in a timeline in which they don't belong. Bamford, the general in charge of the British forces, was part of the original time travel experiments. She went back in time to the 70s, but her journey in the first place meant that her mum got killed by previous test subjects who'd been lost in time. So she was now trapped in a timeline in which she could never have been born, causing her to end up as the genocidal dictator we see in the future, who has any other time travel duplicates taken away and killed. And I really like how this setting was created by times when the Doctor did interfere and times when the Doctor didn't. If the Doctor gets involved in Remembrance of the Daleks, the technology has used to create these experiments. If the Doctor doesn't defeat Wotan, that cripples the world. It's incredibly anxiety-inducing, but it's a really fascinating take on the impact the Doctor can have on history. So where the hell do you even start with the implications of something like this? Well, you could stop whining about the Doctor's origins for a start. If this is to be believed, no wonder they're always changing. This book is about just the Doctor's own actions. When you factor in the Master, the Rani, Captain Jack, John Hart, River Song, it's gonna be a mess. But this also has massive existential questions. Essentially, the TARDIS is, a reset, a randomizer. Does the Doctor have to try and save everyone if this is just going to be undone the next time he travels anywhere else? If he was in, say, a situation where he was dealing with an insurmountable foe, couldn't he just leave, travel for a bit, and then come back, see if the foe even still exists anymore? An incredibly lazy way to go about saving civilizations, and is almost definitely what I would do had I got a TARDIS. Now, the show already has provided an answer to this. The Doctor will help even when it's impossible, even when it's pointless.
There's another thing the TARDIS could do. It could take us away. We could leave. Let history take its course. We go to Marbella in 1989.
Yeah, but you'd never do that.
But what kind of bearing does it have on this story? Well, Susan's departure gets foreshadowed here. The Doctor is on high alert as soon as he finds out that humans are meddling with time travel. As shown by the War Games, any renegade Time Lord encountering other time travel will start freaking out, because it could mean that Mummy and Daddy are on their way upstairs to make sure the lights are off. The Doctor's worried about Susan. He wants to spare her from Gallifreyan justice. It's a retcon, but it's a more interesting read of the Dalek invasion of Earth, and it's the kind of thing you imagine they would have done had the idea of Time Lords been present in the series from the start. One talks about sending Susan off with Ian and Barbara if he manages to get them back to their own time. He plays matchmaker with her and another older character knowing full well she'll never leave him voluntarily. Guria certainly isn't afraid to confront the more patriarchal dimensions of one. What we learn about time travel here has ramifications for Susan leaving. When Ian sees another version of himself killed, was that really him or not? When the other self murders, or it looks like he'll be married to Barbara, what does that say about the original Ian? What does Andrews owe his other selves? So what stings is the Doctor, in a sense, will be abandoning Susan forever in the next story. When he leaves Susan in Dalek Vision of Earth, she will be subject to all of the changes caused by his later adventures. Maybe that's why he never went back for her, because she might not be the Susan he left behind. If you thought Hartnell and Ford's acting wasn't heartbreaking enough, you watch their final scene together with that in mind. Ouch. This opens such a can of worms, but I do find it way more interesting than the fixed points in time. Though, you may have noticed I've mostly been talking about the revelations and their implications rather than the plot itself. That's not to say that the story is bad. It's actually really well written. We've got some very human, very well realised characters like Griffiths, Kelly, Bamford. Such an oppressive, grim atmosphere with some really high stakes and drama. The Doctor has to tell Barbara that he can't save them this time, which is jarring in such a good way. The bit where she thinks that Ian is an imposter stings. The cold open is phenomenal, as is the decision to switch to first person for some of the time travel segments, and to have the prose address Bamford's first name once changes have happened to her and she's literally become a different person. But yeah, I knew about these revelations going into this story from what I read about it, so I was kind of waiting to get to that stuff in the book. I do think the first half could have been tightened up maybe just a little bit, with more of the focus on the interactions rather than the war between Britain and South Africa. But then I got to the final chapters, and then I started to cry. I won't spoil too much of what happens, but Ian essentially gets his own The Girl Who Waited, and it breaks my fucking heart. But we get a really happy ending to this. The epilogue ends right after the chase. Ian and Barbara are back home, they kiss, and then they go see Barbara's mum, and they set about changing history. It's the perfect ending to their story. So I meant what I said at the start. We need to start again. We need to correct this egregious oversight. I'm calling for you to destroy all of your Doctor Who media that's come since this book. We're starting completely from scratch. Someone get on the phone, talk to Russell, tell him to stop